Ryan here with Dark Rangers Inc. And if you're like me, you want to hear the letters AI one more time about as much as you want a sharp stick in the eye. But you also don't want to get left behind, and after all, you're sick of seeing everybody else get the A-pods you know you deserve, meanwhile you're getting 7 likes on Instagram. Now, we all know we've been hearing a lot about AI in the news lately. ChatGPT, is it going to steal all our jobs? Are we going to have a Terminator incident where it takes over the world? Well, I can't answer the question any of those, but I can help you solve the question of which way to spend your hard-earned money to incorporate artificial intelligence to help you not only save time, but give you the best quality astrophotography images you've ever produced. So stay tuned. Maybe you're a beginner or you're a crafty veteran that's been doing this for a long time and you finally realize, hey, I need to get on board with this. It's the way of the future. Maybe don't want to learn a new technology, but I'm here to tell you that it's actually really intuitive and easy to use. And as intimidating as AI might be, it's actually much simpler and it's going to improve your workflow, not complicate it. So I have some data from the Elephant Trunk Nebula. I'm going to go over how to use Topaz denoise and sharpening, RC Astro blur exterminator and noise exterminator, and then the most cost-effective option using the new updates with Lightroom and Photoshop AI, along with a little-known action pack from STARIZONA that gives you a series of actions in Photoshop that's going to help you improve your astrophotography images that I've been using for the last couple years. All right, so here we are in PixInsight. You guys are probably like, whoa, what the heck is going on? We have 2 different sets of data. I've labeled it HA03 and S2, and then HARC03 and S2RC. This top row is going to have the RC Astro plugins added to it, and then the bottom we're going to wait until Photoshop and use Topaz. So everything else I've kind of processed exactly the same all the way through. I'll show you if you don't know how to do that to keep it even throughout everything. Let's do dynamic background extraction. So you choose one, you know, you'd go in, you'd have it do your data points, you know, subtraction, you know, replace target, whatever you're going to do. And what you do is you just drag the triangle to each one, and then the final one, the original one, which in this case would be this middle one, you'd hit the check mark. So I did that with dynamic crop. I chose the one, which in this case was S2, had the most angular shift. I was anywhere from about 203 to 206 degrees, so I had about 3 degrees of shift on the stack, so I had stacking artifacts. Not a lot, I kept it pretty consistent. So I always choose the one that has the most overlap, and then I just did that same thing. I dragged it to each of the other 5 images and then hit the check mark on the S2 to do the final step. So after we did the dynamic crop, we did the dynamic background extraction, and then we did the blur exterminator and the noise exterminator using pretty much the standard settings. I did pull back both of them a little bit because they were both at like 90. So right now, the data is very similar other than some of those things. So you can kind of see a little bit of the differences in the noise. So there's quite a bit less noise right here on the upper layer than there is on the bottom. And then the stars are a little bit tighter. And there's definitely more detail in the nebula than there is with the portion that has not been through BlurX. So you can see right there the fine detail versus it's pretty soft there. So that's what we're going to be comparing. The noise and then the sharpening that Topaz does is going to do on this bottom row versus what has already been done by the RC Astro on the top. And so I did pixel math on both of them after I stretched them. You can do generalized hyperbolic stretch, or you can just do a simple histogram stretch. What I typically do is I'll just kind of drag to the middle, drag to the middle, drag to the middle, and then when I get close, I get to the point where I'm not clipping the darks at all, and I'm getting this point right just below this quarter mark. And the reason I do a little bit below is because I know I'm going to take it into Photoshop and probably brighten it up a little bit, so I tend to leave it a little bit on the dark side. If you want to use generalized hyperbolic stretch, It's very similar. If you guys want a separate tutorial video, but this is more on the flow. I stretch it with the stars just to keep it simple. I don't think it makes a huge difference. I think when you do color calibration and stuff like that, I went ahead and did the pixel math and then the SPCC. The pixel math is where it's probably going to be a little different than what you guys are doing. I went to coldestnights.com, processing tutorials, dynamic narrowband combinations, and then I switched over. Obviously you could do SHO and that would give you, you know, this kind of color image. They had 4x too, which is kind of cool. They have HOO, 4x, and then these some other universal expressions. This HOO and this SHO right here are, I love these. I get great results. If I have time, I'll overlay them right now, but you can check out my Instagram as well. My HOO, I always use this, and my SHO, I use this. And the reason for that is I get something that looks pretty close to this. Like this obviously is much closer to kind of a final image than you typically get if you just put SHO in. You're really bending the curves and the hue and really trying to finagle it to get to a point that looks somewhat like you want to. This is what came out after I ran the pixel math. I did one more dynamic background stretch because there was a little bit of red and blue in the background. But other than that, that's it. This is it. I haven't added saturation. I haven't played with hues. I haven't touched curves of any kind. And so then what I do is I saved them both as TIFFs, RGB Veil RC pre-Photoshop, RGB Veil pre-Photoshop. So right now the main difference is obviously the sharpness, and you can see the noise. So there's almost no noise here. Well, it's the upper left corner. Almost no noise here, and there's obviously noise in here. You can see the noise versus much less noise. So then I take them over to Photoshop. I basically did a kind of a final image. I added the stars back in. Usually do like a levels adjustment. I tend to bring this over to darken it, this to bring it higher. But I've already done that, so I'm not going to do it again. And then the big thing is taking it into camera raw filter, and that's where I'll play with, you know, do I want to cool it off a little bit, warm it up. I did add 2 to the magenta just to kind of bring out the reds more. This is Mackenzie, she's editing with us. And then you can play with the adjustment, stop, contrast. Basically it's like Lightroom. So once I take it into camera raw, this is really the easiest place to kind of play in here. You know, you can bring the whites up and then the blacks down, kind of gives you a little bit more contrast. Even though I kind of have a final image, I bumped the vibrance only a few points and the saturation up 1. And then I go into color mixer and you can play with the hue, right? So I can take the reds, I can make it this kind of cherry pink. Where it was is really nice. You know, you can kind of make it a little bit more of that like fire truck cherry red if you go to the left. Sometimes what I like to do is bring the reds to the left and the oranges to the right to kind of separate them. In this case, I kind of left them pretty close to where they were. And then same with saturation, you can obviously go crazy with this like a lot of people do. All I added to this was, again, the 8 in vibrance and 1 in saturation, and this is what I came up with. And then luminance, that's going to be how light or dark it is. Okay, and so then we ended up with something like this. I added the stars. To do that, you just take the layer and then you just do a screen blend mode. Now this one I'd already done it. Now this is the version that needed the Topaz adjustments. So you saw the final image there using the RC Astro. In Photoshop, I went ahead and cleaned up the non-RC Astro one, and so now we're just doing a little bit of the denoise. I'm gonna go to, I think, about 25 on each. The number was much higher on the RC Astro, but I don't think it's necessarily needed here. And you can enhance sharpness on the Topaz tool again, and it gives you a nice comparison between what it was and what it's going to be. So we'll go ahead and apply that, and then we're going to go to the sharpening AI. And let's find a place with a lot of... So you have motion blur over here, and you can do very noisy, very blurry, out of focus, very noisy, very blurry, and too soft. These are the presets. I'm just going to do too soft, and you can see you get quite a bit of detail enhancement in here. If we go all the way up, it's probably going to look a little, well, no, actually, the AI does a really nice job not distorting it too much. I think we ran it at between 50 and 60 on the RC Astro, so we'll keep it similar. I find you don't need to be as heavy-handed with the Topaz. And then it also has an additional noise suppression. We'll leave it at 10. So I'll go ahead and apply that. And then we'll go ahead and just kind of overlay it. See what we got. I do want to evenly darken this one a little bit too. So they're similar in terms of that. Okay. They were edited identically until Photoshop, and then they're pretty darn close. So I think from a noise standpoint, I probably do like the RC Astro just a little bit more. But you can see more of like, it almost looks like walking noise, and you don't see as much of it. So I'd say the RC Astro wins the noise contest. But on the detail side, I do think the sharpening is a little bit better with Topaz. As I said in the beginning of the video, both are phenomenal, but definitely. I mean, it just has a little bit more of a faded look. It's sharper. It is. I think the sharpening goes to Topaz, and I think the noise goes to RC Astro. Here's what I do, guys, just to put it all together. I would take this version and I would run it through, hit it with a little kiss of sharpening. I would use both, but if I had to choose one, I think the noise component is a little bit more important with what we do, and you really had to pixel peep to see the sharpening difference. The sharpening, I think, was better with the Topaz. I would go with the RC Astro for 3 reasons. One, if you're only using PixInsight, you're covered. If you don't use Photoshop, pretty much have to go with it. 2, I think noise suppression is the most important thing for what we do. 3, I liked having the cleaner image earlier on in the process. You just feel like you're working with cleaner data the whole way. All right, well, if you guys made it this far, I really appreciate it, and God bless you for having the patience. If you did find any value, if you could go ahead and subscribe, I'd really appreciate it. Next week, we're going to do a video on how to build the best budget astrophotography rig you can, so you can avoid all the pitfalls and dollars wasted like I did, and really get the most bang for your buck. And I'm also going to talk about some of the first upgrades you can make if you're already at that point. In the meantime, we're going to go ahead and shoot the Squid Nebula. I'm going to be doing that for the next 4 to 6 weeks, including on my dark sky trip next week for the June 18th new moon for 2023, because I'm looking to get at least 40 hours of data between HA and O3 so we can get that really challenging target for the first time. So stay tuned and clear skies.